Well, good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to the live stream. So glad to have you guys in the building with me this evening. And I have a continuation of this month topic, which is all about your booking calendar, setting it up for you to be less stressed, more productive, and able to take on appointments without all of the back and forth that goes into sometimes scheduling appointments with people. And tonight we're talking about how to determine the number of booking times you need. And this is important because regardless of your leadership style or your role, if you are in a nonprofit and you're running a team there, or if you are a small business owner and you're running a team there, or you are in a large corporation and you have to connect with a lot of different people, using this technique is useful. So it's useful for you in all of those scenarios. Managing your booking schedule efficiently is really, really crucial to being successful and having a balance in your work in your life because it takes some of the minutia, some of that administrative time off of you. And so today I'm going to guide you through a practical approach to calculating an optimal number of booking times that align with your availability, your client or customer need, and making sure you know how and when to tweak and test and refine what you got. So, we're going to talk about it from analyzing your availability to understanding your client and customer preferences to setting that realistic time slot. We're just going to cover a few, like 4 or 5 tips. I'm Florence, a productivity practitioner and coach who help purposeful leaders find and eliminate friction in your systems through video tutorials and coaching. And so, right now, I want to say, let's go ahead and dive in and see what we're going to talk about tonight. I'm going to go right into content at this point, and then I'll come back and talk with some of you folks who are out there in the building with me this evening. And again, I appreciate you being here. So, tip number one is really key because you start with an assessment. Anything that you're going to start to do, you need to do an assessment. And so the first one is assessing your availability. It may sound a little interesting, I'll put it that way, but determining what you have available for taking these appointments. That means you've got to look at your daily, weekly, and monthly schedule. If you use time blocking, that's a great opportunity. Look at what you've got time blocked and then consider those time blocks and include things like time for your family, time for meals, time for working out, your personal time or your self care time. Consider all of those factors when you look at what do I really have? Because this is one where you're not flexing your time available every day as the day come up. What you're doing is blocking time in your calendar that people can then use. You don't know who the people are or how far in advance. Actually, we're going to talk about that. Who they are, who is going to book that time with you. If you are working within a nonprofit, let's just say you have I'm going to use something we all almost everyone has to deal with, a homeowners association, and you have people who need to book time with you, then your population or the people are going to be folks that you may be familiar with. But if you have a small business, I'm talking to you, Denise Jordan out there, Apron Diva, welcome to the live stream. You don't know who those people are always who are going to be wanting to book time on your calendar. And so it's a little bit different because it could be anybody who went to your website, anybody who heard your podcast, anybody you met and just shared Apron Diva with them, anybody who watched your videos or your live streams, any of those folks, any of your students in your program who would need to book time with you. So blocking that time out and considering what you really have available and is going to be step number one. Do that assessment so that you are clear about what you have available. I have heard so many times people say, just send me an email and we'll work it out. That is a huge load on you. The other thing that you want to factor in, if you travel to different sites or to clients or to an office, wherever, then factor in your travel time, especially if you've got regular travel time anywhere in your week. It could be 1 day or 6 days or 7 days, whatever. Factor that in because if you're in a situation where you need to be stable, you don't want to have people booking time during your travel time because you won't be stable. If you need preparation time, factor that in. If you need 15 minutes to prepare before an appointment or you need 30 minutes between appointments, factor those in. And when I say assessing, I'm not saying just think about it. I'm saying literally write it down on something in an Apple Note, in an Evernote, in a on a piece of paper, write it down in a Google Keep note, write it so you can actually see it and make the assessment. It's not what you're feeling and how you emotionally react to it, it's subjective. You're literally looking at it. So, number one is just make sure you go through and get that assessment done. I'm going to hop out here and say hello to a few folks who are in the building with us this evening. And I'm going to start with this young lady because I'm so happy to have you here, Denise. You said that this is something that you want to employ in your business. So, um, she says, that's right. I just don't know and need to sort this out. Okay, awesome. And of course, I'm going to say good evening to Frank Jackson. Thank you for being literally in the building with me. And I'm going to maybe tease a little bit about that afterwards. And then hello and happy Friday Live Tribe and Replay crew. We're moving on up. Thank you for being with us in the building this evening, the emotional CEO. So glad to have you here. I am really excited about this topic because it's one that I haven't seen a lot of people talk about from just the what you got to do to get yourself ready. A lot of people talk about the tools to buy and how much they cost and what they do, but they don't talk about how you get from I'm thinking about doing this scheduling thing to what are the steps for me to actually implement it so that I'll be successful. And I came to this because I walked through this journey myself and I didn't it's going through the journey that I've realized these are the steps that I went through. I had to figure out what step one, I had to assess what I had available, what my capacity was to be able for my clients to book time with me. And so that's why I'm starting with it because if you start and just throw a bunch of times open on your calendar, you're going to be miserable. Ask me how I know. Been there, done that. Number two is understanding the demand that will be placed on you. Now, what do I mean by understanding the demand? That means get an idea from your clients, look at past patterns when you had if you were doing discovery calls or clarity calls or whatever you want to call them, look back over say a 6-month period and look and see how often were they happening. If you scheduled them for 30 minutes and they were going for 45 minutes, review that so you know the patterns as well as the peak hours when you were taking those appointments. If you were consistently moving other things around to fit, like let me give you an example. If your peak hours is say 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., then that's one thing. But if your peak hours with your clients or with your HOA members or whoever it is 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., you need to be able to see that in these planning stages. So whatever those peak hours are, and then doing a little analysis on what kind of is goes together. What have your clients, your constituents, the people that you're going to be putting this out to? Do you have a track record and what kinds of things have they asked for and preferences that they've asked you for? Another item in this, looking at it, is what information did you need that you didn't ask for prior to get into these appointments. So all of that information, you have a history, you have something to analyze. Use that feedback that you have to adjust your availability. You absolutely use what you already have to adjust your availability as you look to put this new system in place or this new tool in place. And so we're going to go on to number 3 is now you can set some realistic time slots. Now you know I need 2 hours a day, a half an hour a day, 4 hours a day, 3 days a week, mornings, evenings, my clients, my constituents. This is when their peak times are. You can now say I'm going to set some realistic time slots and how long each appointment needs to be. Do not overbook by yourself, and by that I mean make sure you put some buffer time between those appointments. Give If you need 10 minutes. I've talked about this in scheduling and I talked about it in the context of doing it manually, but in these booking systems, if you need 10 minutes between appointments, 15 minutes between appointments, 30 minutes between appointments, you can put it in so that you're not booked and there's no time to take a break or open up your notes for the next appointment. Avoid overbooking yourself in terms of setting these realistic time slots. And I'm saying this is not happening in software. This is happening by you just writing it out. So you have a clear picture of what you are doing. And then consider what type of service or activity when you're setting these slots up. If you need to be where you can share a screen, then that's going to affect how much time, because this goes back to knowing the prep time. If you need a few minutes to set up your software, to share your screen, or to show pictures, for example, I'm going to use Denise since you're in the building. If you want to be able to show a client new aprons from Apron Diva and you need to have those pictures or those images available and ready to go when the appointment starts, then consider that kind of detail in your planning and just make a note of it. You don't need anything fancy, just piece of paper, notepad, iPad, whatever, and jot those details down. So as you're selecting those slots, you know that I've got to keep this activity in mind. I got to keep this type of service in mind. I've got to have this thing ready to go. So consider what your activity is when you're going to be booking. And you could have different types of bookings. You could have a booking type for a discovery call or a clarity call, and that's 15 minutes or 30 minutes, right? And if you plan it, you can stick to it, but put that in. And maybe you want to have so many of those a week, a month. You want to have 10 people that you talk to fresh, new every month. Then you're going to pick 10 time slots in the month where you're going to take those, as opposed to you have a group of participants in your program that you need an hour with them and they're paying you for an hour a week. Now you've got, and you're going to take 5 clients. So that's, if you're doing 5 client meetings a week and that's an hour, you know you've got to 5 hour long slots in your calendar in that week or in that month, whatever the time period is. So really understand what the activity is that you're setting up these time slots for, because they're not always going to be the same activity. They're going to be different. And it's true no matter what you're setting it up for. The next thing is to, once you've done this, you're going to put these bookings time slots in your software. Set time aside to test, tweak, and adjust. Start with a tentative schedule and monitor your trends. How's it going? Does it work for you? Is it too much? Is it too little? If and sometimes I'm going to use this in the terms of business, especially because Denise, you're here, and I know this is a topic you're very interested in. If your goal is I'm going to have 10 new clients this month or every month. And for me to get 10 clients a month, I need to do 20 clarity calls. Again, you know you need 20 of these meeting times in your calendar. And now you've got to put in everything else. So put it in, but then don't be so wedded to it or committed to it that you're not willing to change it. Because if you find that with everything else you have, back to step one, assessing your capability or your availability, you find that it is not realistic for me to do 20 discovery calls a month or introduction calls a month. I need to scale that back to 15 because I need those other 2 hours to serve clients. Then watching what's happening once you apply it is that tweaking and testing and adjusting, testing how it's going. Test that you ask the correct questions when the person booked, right? So you could ask questions, you can give information. Are you getting the correct information that you need? Are you giving the client or the constituent, the volunteer, sufficient information that the system terms the booking tool returns to them for them to be prepared? If you are you finding that even though you're giving it to them, they're consistently showing up unprepared, then that is when you will be able to see here's where I'm going to make some adjustments and how this is going. Maybe I have it send out an additional reminder. Maybe I do something else, but you'll see it because you're monitoring how your trends are going. Are you asking for time too far in advance, or are you asking or letting time be too close? Right? So, for example, figuring out your time slots, you said, okay, I'm going to do 10, 15 discovery calls in a month, and they can book 30 days in advance. Or do you need it so that they can book 60 days in advance? Or do you need it to book 90 days in advance? Or do you need it to come in and say only 2 weeks in advance? Because maybe in your testing and your monitoring, you find out when people book 30 days in advance, they forget all about it. They don't put it in their calendar, and you've got time that you can't take another appointment, and people are forgetting and they're not showing up for their appointment. All of that comes into this monitoring, testing, and making adjustments and being willing to be flexible in your thinking and in your approach to make changes based on the demand. And it also means that hopefully you're doing a regular weekly review, whether it's weekly or monthly or bi weekly, regularly you're reviewing and adjusting those times based on the feedback that you see and the data that you gather. So I'm going to go back because we got comments coming from the community, and I want to make sure that we get to them. And so Denise says, I always underestimate how long task activities will take. These tend to take longer than I planned. And so if you're talking about booking with other people, when you book that time, when you set that time aside, ensure that the other person is aware that is how much time they get and they're not getting any more. And you come prepared and you expect them to come prepared. If I tell a client or someone I'm working with and volunteer, you've got 45 minutes, they don't get 46. At about 2 minutes to, I'll say, we've got 2 minutes and we're going to wrap this up because I've got something else right after it. Even if the something else is I need to get up and take a walk or get something to drink or just get away from the computer or get away from the phone to give myself a mental break. but I want to respect that time for myself and for that person. They've asked for 45 minutes. I also don't have the right to take more than the 45 minutes that they've set aside in their day. And then so that's my encouragement to you is be a little bit of a stickler, right? When you put these systems in place, be a little bit of a stickler. It can feel emotionally in the beginning like you're not being very friendly, but you're respecting the other person's time and you're respecting your time. That's really what's happening. And so just be willing to do that. And then a lot of it is in the preparation. I talked about earlier when you consider the factors and the activities, that's all about preparation, being prepared before you show up and before they show up. Okay. So we have really gone through the bulk. I do have an example I'm going to talk through with you this evening, but let's say I'm going to schedule it's a little bonus, and I'm not going to put anything on the screen. And as you see, if you have questions, please ask your questions this evening because I want to answer them. But I'm going to walk through this example here and show you and kind of give you an idea of what a 5 day, a Monday through Friday schedule could look like, assuming these are the parameters: 2 hours a day, booking appointments where I'm actually meeting with the client and in my case, I'm doing a coaching call. My coaching calls are typically an hour, no more. They can be less, but no more than an hour. And I'm going to set aside 2 hours a day, Monday through Friday, to take these calls. So Monday, I've got some time in the middle of the day. So my Monday time is 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. My Tuesday time is 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. My Wednesday time is 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. My Thursday time is 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And my Friday, although I don't take appointments on Friday, but in this example, it's 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. I've hit clients who need me in the morning, in the middle of the day, and in the evening. If I need to adjust it, I can. This is just for one type. It's coaching appointments that people want to make with me, and I'm giving them time. So I can do 2 a day and that's it. If somebody once those 2 appointments are booked in the day, nobody else can book that type of appointment with me for that day. They have to pick another day. So that's an example. You don't always have to pick the same time. You don't have to pick the same day. You can vary it. You can break it up. And because I know I'll show you some examples another live stream and maybe even the next one is how I set these that they're an hour. I give myself 15 minutes before. And so there's a buffer between them. So in that hour, if it's 2 to 4, it'll do 2 to 3, and then it will give me a little 15-minute break, and then it'll book the other one. So it actually goes a little bit later than 4, but that's generally how I start. If I don't want any days, I just don't schedule those days available. And then I sprinkle other things in between that. And oh, by the way, I have some private bookings where the person can't just fill in when they want, they have to contact me and then I send them a private link. So I've got time set aside for those more personal appointments that I don't want people to be able to go to a website and find. So that's also something to consider. Um Denise says, "Yes, lady." She said, "That's what I need to do. I would tell my clients 30 minutes and give them an hour. If you tell them 30 minutes and your rates are based on that 30 minutes, then you're cutting your revenue in half by giving them an hour." I don't mean to be cruel or heartless. You're doing that, but you're also taking time from something else for you, whether it be for your business, your YouTube channel, your family. You're taking time from you when you give up that other 30 minutes. Again, we all have 1,440 minutes a day. We don't get any more, and we all have the same amount. The difference is how we use it. Now, some people have a little bit more assistance than others. Some people have a little bit less. Some people have a few more resources, meaning computer hardware, software, and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, the actual person has 1,440 minutes. And I don't care who you are, where you came from, it doesn't matter. That is an equal number for every person. So we got a question here. We're going to get into questions a little bit. So go ahead and keep putting your questions in, and I'm going to pull them out. So I want to suggest to you that there are a few little takeaways for you in this. And so the first one is kind of summarizing what I've shared tonight in these 4 steps is truly analyze your availability. Don't be so quick to just start putting information into some software. Take the time to do that evaluation and assessment because it's really important. It'll set you up to be successful. And in doing the assessment, consider your client needs, past booking patterns, all the things we talked about, and take those into account. Then, once you put your system in place and you figured out how many discovery calls, how many training calls, how many consulting calls, how many live stream guests you're going to have, and tech checks, all the things that you could be having people book for. And Denise, you do live streams. So, if you're doing tech checks, that's a great thing to put in your booking software instead of you manually figuring it out. Send the people a link and let them put it in, and then you show up. But then once you put it in, make sure you're looking at the patterns and use the feedback and the data that you gather to make the adjustments that are necessary so that it's effective for you and you can move forward. I'm just going to suggest you want to go ahead and start preparing, start applying these tips now. Do that first step this week, this weekend. Do that very first step because it will set you up to get the rest of it in place and for it to be successful for you. So that is the content. What we want to do is get to a couple of questions, or at least a question. I'm going to do my little Q colon thing here so I can find the questions easily. And so the question that Denise asked this evening is, how do you keep from going over when the client keeps talking, has questions, or is obviously needy? It's hard to cut them off. Um, the key is to set up the parameters at the beginning of the call. At the beginning of the meeting, set up and get their agreement. Hey, we've set up 30 minutes. We're going to keep to the 30 minutes. You've shared these three things or 5 things for us to discuss. We're going to go through them. If we need another appointment, you're welcome to book another appointment with me. I have a hard stop. This is magical language here. I have a hard stop because I've got another appointment. Your follow-on appointment may not be with another person. Your follow-on appointment may be having a cup of tea with your husband. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is you've made a commitment. Your follow-on appointment may be doing something in your business, or it may be you taking, getting on the mat. Whatever that follow-on appointment is, just let the person know that you've got a hard stop, and stop at 5 minutes before, at 3:25. Hey, we've got 5 minutes and we need to wrap up. I'll be glad to continue this conversation. Feel free to book another appointment with me. It's not harsh, it's not unfeeling, it's very empathetic, and it's respectful of their time, These are not generally social conversations. When I call my best friend and we just hanging out having a social conversation, I'm not on a time clock. We're just talking and having a good time. But when I'm talking business, even when I'm doing community service, it's business for me. So I'm very intentional about the time that I take and give people during that work. I mean, it's really truly just that simple. So let's see if we got any other questions. Oh my goodness, we got some great people in the chat tonight. So I want to say hello to them. I'm seeing y'all. Hello, Ibrahim. So glad to see you. So glad to see you. So glad to see you. Oh my goodness. Hey, Miss Ananea, you know I'm still feeling guilty about not greeting you last week. I know usually I didn't have to, but I feel bad. I felt bad. I was talking with my team. I was like, oh, I feel so horrible. And hello, Mr. Hunt. Glad to have you in the building with us this evening. If you guys have a question about the topic of today, which is how to determine the number of booking times you need. So if you're doing any type of work, whether it's volunteer, business, that you're getting appointments, you're having people book time with you, I've walked through some steps. I'm not sure if you were here for it all. You can watch the replay. Would love to have you do that if you weren't. Of how to figure out how much time you really need, how many of those sessions you need, how long they need to be. What are the factors that you would consider um, to make sure that you're not overbooking yourself and that you can really fit your requirements in, your time requirements into your day, your week, your month. And that's what we've gone over this evening. If someone has a question, I'm going to give you a few seconds to get your question in because I love to answer questions. And I'm just checking to see if I missed anybody this week. I'm not seeing no problem, David. You just got here. Yeah, I try to go fast. I want to get done in not too long and keep people on here forever. But I'm so happy you all joined this evening and you came through and you supported. And we're going to continue. This month of May is all about this booking. And I like to start at a very basic level and then move into more detail and and I want to show you how to set up one of these. And I'll just share with you the tool that I use is TidyCal. And I shared last week, I believe it was, why I use it. But there are a number of these tools available in a bunch of different ways. So I will go over a list of what some of them are, and you choose the one that works for you, for whatever your reasons are. But choose the tool that you believe will work for you. And then you can always change it because you've gone through the process. You understand how to get yourself ready to be successful with it. So I'm going to just say good night to you. There's going to be a video over here. Go ahead and check it out. Thank you for coming through. And if you haven't subscribed, subscribe to the channel and hit the replay, the bell, so you know when I drop a video or go live. Good night, everybody.